I will speak from here. My name is José Miguel Rubio Iglesias. I am the chair of this session, which title is The Use and Potential of INSPIRE for the Development of Indicators. We have a very interesting set of presentations today, 5 presentations in total. I would like to do some administrative announcements. Each speaker has 15 minutes, as you know, for their presentation, so we can have maximum 15 minutes. So we can have a few minutes after each presentation for a few questions. I will be a bit strict with time, so in order for you not to get surprised that I have prepared these 2 minutes, and please conclude. So I will try to waive it when you speak. So we are aligned with time, so we don't arrive very late to the coffee break. I think that's all what I wanted to say. So I will then give the floor to the first speaker of the afternoon, who is Dominique Laurent from IGN France, who is going to present the UN-GGIM Europe core data to complement INSPIRE framework, the second step, which I think better complements your presentation from yesterday, right? Yes. Very good.
Other side. First, lower the micro. Good afternoon, everyone. So first, as time is counted, an introduction, maybe just to explain my long and maybe mysterious title. So what is UN-GGIM? It's United Nations Initiative on Global Geographic Information Management. It's an initiative that is 6 years old. It began in 2011. From the statistic division of United Nations and with wide implication of the statistical community. I imagine it's why it was in this session about indicators. And there are activities both at global level and also at regional level on continents such as Europe, Africa, and my presentation is really related only to Europe. What is core data? Core data was defined by the working group of UN-GGIM Europe as priority data. It should be geographic data with direct location and the data considered as the most useful to analyze, achieve, or monitor the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, either directly or indirectly. You can wonder also, why are we complementing INSPIRE? INSPIRE is about harmonization of existing data. There are common models, but the content may still be heterogeneous. For instance, regarding the level of detail, there are also a lot of voidable attributes of feature types. So in a way, it's a common box, but sometimes with no content in it. And the purpose of core data is about encouraging production of new data, upgrade existing data to have some real content. So INSPIRE is really about common structure, and core data is about common content. the first step was to choose the core data themes among the INSPIRE themes. So we have chosen 14 themes, mainly in Annex 1, but also elevation, land cover, auto imagery, from Annex 2, statistical unit, buildings, land use, governmental services, area management, from Annex 3. Okay, so why second step? Because last year I gave a presentation and it was my last slide on the presentation. The second step is about specification of core data themes to be presented next year. So now it's today. It occurs. So what is our second step? Our second step, the objective is to work recommendation for content. Initially, it was supposed to be data specification, but to make the objective more clear, we have changed the title of our deliverable to make more clear that what we focus is about the content. And it's based, the approach is based on twofold. On one hand, existing standards, mainly INSPIRE, is why we are complementing INSPIRE, and user requirements with focus on the SDG. The principles, we use INSPIRE as starting point because at least it provides us a common terminology. We can understand each other in the working group. Everyone knows what we are talking about. And we investigate user requirements with different sources, bibliography, questionnaire, user interviews, our own expertise, and so on. We try to decide on recommended level of details on core content, both on the scope and on the data model. Sometimes we restrict INSPIRE. We think INSPIRE is too rich. Sometimes we think INSPIRE maybe is not enough. And also trying to work on quality rules. So some first results. Our work is more advanced for theme cadastral parcel, address, and geographical name. It's not totally finalized, but almost. And we have still ongoing work on the remaining themes. So I will present both results and ongoing discussion. So some examples regarding the first result. Our approach is really depending on the theme. For some theme, for instance, there are themes that are really well defined, such as cadastral parcel, address, administrative unit. In fact, we are working mainly on quality criteria. There is not so much to add or to subtract from INSPIRE. We can have also some rich themes with lots of features and attributes such as transport network, hydrography. In this case, we are more going to restrict INSPIRE and to select which are the main feature types, the main attributes. And I will say there are also some empty themes, for instance, elevation, ortho image. We don't know the level of detail, but we don't even know in INSPIRE what is the expected content. Should we have a digital terrain model, a digital surface model, which colors are required for ortho image? Do we need just colors or infrared or something else? So really this INSPIRE specification are just exchange format, but there is no real content in it. So of course we have more work on these themes. So some examples, cadastral parcels. Our main point is to encourage cadastral parcel forming a partition of the territory. We are pushing to have as geographic extent the whole land territory, if possible, including public domain, what is not yet the case in all countries. We are pushing also to have completeness, to have good topology, no gaps, no overlaps, to have the cadastral parcel as single area. The other point we want to push is an efficient link between the land registry and the cadastral map. So it's why our model is really focusing very simply the geometry and the reference that allows the link between the map and the registry. And also pushing for temporal consistency, so for continuous update of the cadastral parcel. They are our main recommendation. Some other example about geographical name. Our recommendation, they are for production. So we want to avoid the duplication of efforts, and we have limited the scope to the name place that are not in other themes. If you have a name place such as a river that is in hydrography or in administrative unit, there is no need to capture it twice. But of course, to facilitate the use in delivery phase, it's possible to combine with other themes. But our real scope is the place names that are not yet in other themes. Another point that is very important in our point of view about geographical names is to have the importance of a name place. For mapping, you need, for instance, for the populated place, to know that Aalborg is a big city. You should display it with a big font, and there are smaller places that need a smaller font, and some that are even smaller that don't deserve to be on the map. So there is something in INSPIRE that is the least and the most detailed viewing resolution, but in a way it's rather subjective, and you can interpret them in different ways. So our idea in core data is to recommend more objective criteria, such as the population, of if it's a populated place, or the size, so to capture the name place not only by a point, as it's generally the case today, but also encouraging the name place to be captured with their true geometry. Even maybe if it's difficult to have this geometry very accurate, but at least giving an idea of the importance of the name place. Another example is regarding address. We are pushing to have production of true address. Address are mainly for geocoding, but they should enable to find the related building. And in fact, in some countries in rural areas, the address may be limited to the village name. So there are several buildings having the same address, and it's not enough to find the right place. So it's allowed by the INSPIRE. You can have address at address area or even at administrative unit order, and we would like to have true address with street name and house number, and no longer this address limited to the village name. So it's the kind of recommendation we have. Some ongoing discussion on theme buildings. We are mainly focused on the geometric representation about should 3D data be core, is it a key requirement, so it's among our key discussion for building. We had also some discussion about governmental services, and we decided to change the name of this theme and to rename it Basic Service. It's a requirement from the SDG, access to basic service. It's really a requirement coming again and again in the SDG. And we will select maybe some key features of utility, such as power plants, or environmental management facilities, such as landfill. So really taking only the key features of this sub-theme, and in opposite, extended the INSPIRE scope. For instance, in INSPIRE, the governmental services are very much limited to risk management, to environment, and we want also to have those related, for instance, to leisure. We think, for instance, that sport facilities are complementing the SDG about health. To have good health, you need sport facilities. We think also that cultural leisure are complementing education. Education is not just at the beginning of your life, it should be all your life. So you need also libraries, museums, and things like this. We have discussion also, a lot of discussion on theme area management. So we are discussing about extending the INSPIRE scope, because INSPIRE scope is limited to the area management that are relevant for environment. And in the SDG, of course, there are two other components. It's the economy, the development, and the society. It should be sustainable not only by the nature, but also by the human people. So we are extending this INSPIRE scope. We are thinking also on focusing on specific areas. For instance, there may be regulation applying for all buildings or all rivers. Typically in France, it's forbidden to shoot when you go hunting, or it's forbidden to spread pesticides close to the buildings in a buffer of 100 meters around the buildings. But it's for all the buildings, so maybe geographic information, it's enough to provide the buildings, not so interest to provide the buffer. We had discussion about it. It may be of interest also to know if the geometry has legal value or not. Sometimes the legal value is in the text and not in the geometry. So it may be interesting for users to know what is the value of this geometry. And we have also the idea that maybe we should manage the regulation text and responsible authorities in other databases. Of course, all these managed areas are of interest. In a way, they are all core. But should all this information be geographic data? Typically, the text may be in a documentary database with all the legal texts that are not related to geographic information, and it's the same for the responsible authorities. They may be in another database and be used for other purpose, not just for regulated areas. So, conclusion. Core data and INSPIRE. INSPIRE in theory was driven by pan-European or cross-border use case. It's about interoperability of existing data. It's why there are common data models. In core data, we are really driven by the Sustainable Development Goal, mainly by national or even local use case to achieve the SDG, but there are common requirements, so it's logical to have common content. Core data and INSPIRE. Core data should ensure the production of common content. Our deliverable will be just recommendation, but recommendation with the UN weight, so we hope they will be taken into account, they will be implemented. INSPIRE is ensuring the delivery of data according to common data model, common format, common for services. So adding one with the other, users should get, in a way, all not perfect data, but better data, harmonized data with both common minimum content and common structure. And I have added the last slide because I don't know why my presentation was about indicators. Core data are for analyzing, achieving, and monitoring the SDG. Maybe monitoring is not our main aim. I will say our main aim is achieving the SDG. But nevertheless, they can be used for computing indicators because indicators require mainly statistical data, but also some geographic data. Of course, the main example is to display the results. You need administrative unit, statistical unit to show maps with indicators, but also to compute some indicators. Relating to the SDG, there are several indicators about accessibility. So you need, of course, transport network, but you need also point of interest, for instance, governmental services. You need address maybe for geocoding, enterprise, or shops, or things like this. You need statistical unit, population distribution, to know if the population is well served by the transport network. And there are also another set of indicators regarding areas of interest and their protection, for instance, for biodiversity, for forest, for ocean, and things like this. So themes such as land cover, land use, protected site, area management are also quite relevant for the computation of indicators. Many thanks.
This presentation to another session, so either you have now a question or never. So please, Antonio.
Thank you, Dominique, for your clear summarized activities in your group. But only one question regarding the first slides. In the first slides, is a comment.
This?
You put the United Nations initiative on global geographic information management, not the global geospatial information management. Is a very important difference.
Oh.
Sorry.
I did my presentation too quick. Maybe geographic is more French and geospatial is more English. Sorry for this.
Any other question, remarks, suggestion? Okay, actually, I think these recommendations are clearly in the good direction to ensure that whatever we are producing within the context of INSPIRE can actually be reused across Europe, creating pan-European data sets which can respond to specific use cases. It's not enough just to make services who are interoperable, they use the same data model. We have to enter action into the content to ensure that we can use data sets from different countries and they all can be used in order to create applications and to solve specific problems which have a transnational nature.
I add just one sentence. We are also using the INSPIRE methodology and opening our deliverables for review. So you may be invited through the INSPIRE or the communities to review our documents. Once they are ready, they are on UN-GGIM website and they are open for reviews in some time. So if you are interested, you may contribute also to this work. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dominique. So the next speaker is Hugo Pullman from the European Commission. I'm going to prepare the presentation. He is going to tell us more about how to combine INSPIRE and Copernicus for operational urban spatial analysis and how to enhance data on urban population and employment. So the floor is yours, Hugo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So just to tell you where I come from, I'm working for, as you see, for the European Commission for DG Regional and Urban Policy. More specifically, we've got a unit dealing with policy development and economic analysis. And in that unit, I'm responsible for the team dealing with geospatial information and analysis. Now, the title here, it could go a bit in all kinds of directions, combining INSPIRE and Copernicus data for urban spatial analysis. You will see that in a certain sense, this follows up quite neatly to the previous presentation. First, a few words about the urban policy context in which we deal with spatial data. Then I will talk you about a few opportunities for urban indicators development using geospatial data and what it implies as some basic infrastructure needs in terms of data provision. And then, well, the combination of Copernicus data and INSPIRE data might offer solutions to these infrastructure challenges, and then discuss briefly the remaining challenges and opportunities. So on the one hand, within the European Union, there's the urban agenda, focusing amongst other priorities on monitoring and benchmarking of cities. And one of the practical actions within this attempt to enhance monitoring and benchmarking of cities is the deployment by the JRC of the EEC Urban Data Platform, which is a multi-level, multi-geographical level platform on the internet to disseminate and to explore indicators at urban level. On the other hand, it's obvious that the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, is operationalized with a set of monitoring indicators which have a very clear spatial dimension. And so this spatial dimension offers, in principle, the opportunity for geospatial data and analysis to tackle issues of the spatial heterogeneity of cities, and to go to go and look inside the cities, what is happening inside the cities in terms of spatial diversity. And then one can only notice that the classical, traditional statistical systems have a very hard time coping with this problem due to the way data are traditionally collected, the cost of data collection, the geographical level, not in the least also coping with confidentiality issues and privacy protection issues. Now, to a certain extent, spatial analysis can certainly help to overcome some of these obstacles, especially when focusing on indicators related to proximity and accessibility. But in order to get there, in order to be able to start this kind of analysis, there are a few basic data infrastructure needs that need to be fulfilled, and that can be multi-purpose in a sense that they should be able to be used for multiple thematic analysis. So what is crucial, definitely inside the city, is to have high resolution, high spatial resolution data on population distribution. And ideally also on population components and on temporal differences in the distribution of population, daytime population versus nighttime population, for example. And at the same time, confidentiality constraints need to be respected. So even in the well, let's say almost ideal situation where a statistical system would be entirely register-based and where all population figures can be bound to address points, if you look at a very high spatial resolution inside the city, there will certainly be constraints of confidentiality protection, avoiding you hindering the possibility to exploit these point-based data at a very high resolution. Another topic is definitely the area of land use characteristics inside the city, where ideally these should be comparable amongst cities. There will be also the need of having a decent layout of building locations and their characteristics. And all this should also be compatible with comprehensive transport networks containing adequate attributes. So we can ask ourselves, in the current situation, can selected Copernicus and INSPIRE data meet these kind of key needs? And we did some tests combining Copernicus Urban Atlas land use data on the European functional urban areas. And we used this as a kind of first as a spatial framework in combination with population estimates. So this means that the unit of analysis and the unit to which we will attach population estimates will be the polygon, the building block that is the entity of the unit of the Copernicus Urban Atlas datasets. This means that population and potentially also employment, workplace-based employment figures should be downscaled or can be downscaled to the level of Urban Atlas polygons. And this downscaling, it can be done in all kinds of ways, very blunt and well, raw ways, using just some thematic classification of the land use of the polygon in itself. But in order to enhance this kind of downscaling process, we can benefit from the INSPIRE building units location and ideally also their characteristics. And so what we were aiming at is to find examples of data sets where we haven't got only the building footprint and accompanying the surface, but also an information about the height of the buildings, or at least the number of floors, and also ideally a functional classification of the buildings, or the individual buildings or clusters of buildings. And so, not surprisingly, introducing this kind of information to enhance the downscaling process can substantially reduce the error rates of the location of the population or the employment estimates. And especially the employment downscaling benefits from the information about the building functions. We explored 4 cases in 4 countries, all with a slightly different availability in terms of data combinations. We looked at some major cities in France, at the cities in the Netherlands, the cities in Flanders, in Belgium, and also the cities in the region of Madrid. And in 3 of the 4 cases, we had access to employment data at a relatively high resolution as input data. In France at the municipal level, but also inside the cities at sub-city arrondissement. And what was interesting as well, that these data were split by sector, so we could distinguish industry from market services from non-market services. In the Netherlands, postal codes for employment, and in Madrid, census tracts, secciones, which are very small areas below commune level. In Flanders, currently, we didn't find any employment information, but there we did some tests with residential employment, population, sorry. Building height was in almost all the cases available, except in Madrid, where the number of floors was available. And we used a functional classification of the buildings from the data available where it was available. It is not currently available in the Flemish data. And all this was combined where it was relevant with the Urban Atlas land use classification. Now, this all sounds perhaps a bit abstract, so let's look into 2 concrete cases of how we combined this information. In the case of the French cities, here you've got a zoom on the center of Lyon. We had the Urban Atlas land use classification at the level of the Urban Atlas polygons, as you see. And then by individual building, from the building units layer, and information about the building functions with quite some thematic detail for public buildings, for industrial buildings, big commercial entities, but also with a big category of, well, let's say residual buildings for which no information about its use was available. You could assume that these are mostly residential, but in fact, you just don't know. On the other hand, this layer comes with height information per individual building. And so what we did was to downscale the information, the figures of employment by sector at the level of the communes or the arrondissement towards the Urban Atlas polygons by using the volume of the building weighted by a weighting factor depending on the function of the building and depending on the land use, the type of the polygon in which the building is located. A similar exercise we did for the Dutch cities, where again we've got the Urban Atlas land use. This data source is identical. We've got clusters of buildings from the Dutch building layer, with a much more detailed classification of functions, but again with a big residual class of presumably mostly residential buildings. Building height again is provided. The process went in a very similar way, but well, with some other challenges in terms of how to cope with some of the building functions, which are in certain categories in themselves reflecting mixed uses. Well, here we had cases like a block of houses mixed with a parking garage and a postal office. This was a kind of a functional class. And then another class, a building with perhaps a shopping center and some residential areas in the same class. So that is not so easy to cope with. So these cases, together with the other experiments in Madrid and in Flanders, clearly showed that definitely the sufficiently high resolution of the input data is very important. What helped here also was the sectoral classification of employment in the case of France. That a classification of building functions together with Urban Atlas land use categories can be very beneficial in terms of also trying to distinguish the land use classification of buildings for which you haven't got any precise functional categorization. Building height is a very important information element in order to improve the results. And the combination of all these elements, if successfully available, reduces the location errors in such a way that we think that the estimates become appropriate for proximity and accessibility analysis inside cities. Still, there are a substantial number of challenges, some opportunities as well. The update cycles of the various layers are sometimes unknown or sometimes very long. Reference years tend to fluctuate. Timeliness is sometimes an issue or sometimes unknown. Ideally, you would think or dream about a harmonized functional classification of buildings. This is not something we have seen in the current available data sets. There's a varying level of detail of classification. Moreover, these classifications tend to be documented in native languages. So in the case of the Netherlands and France, we didn't have any substantial problem, but problems may be more acute in other cases. And there might be metadata also needed for the explanation of these categories. The openness of data access and the ease of discovery is definitely also still an issue. On the other hand, the combined use of this kind of spatial data can definitely overcome confidentiality obstacles and make available data at suburban, at infra-urban level appropriate for analysis. I have listed here a few references. In case you want to know more about some of these activities, you can read some details in some of these papers, but happy to answer any questions otherwise. Thanks.
So any question for Hugo? Yeah, please.
Just one point. You talked. Sorry, thank you. You talked a little bit about meeting needs, and I just wondered whose needs are they, and how did you identify them?
Sorry?
One of your slides talks about meeting needs. Meeting needs.
Yes.
And so I wondered whose needs are they, and how did you identify them?
well, this was mainly intended to highlight a number of basic infrastructure needs. It's basic stuff you need if at all you want to assess proximity or accessibility to services in an urban environment. You will need a detailed distribution of employment or population in relationship to the layout of the urban fabric. And so as soon as you want or you need to produce this kind of analysis, you will need this kind of information. So that definitely well, it's not a need of the end user or the end consumer of the information. It's a need for the analyst.
Any other question? Other question. This building information from the cases you explained, Amsterdam or Flanders, where did you get this information? It's supposed to be the INSPIRE part of the exercise. Did
Yes.
you get this information from INSPIRE services, or it's just because it's covered by the INSPIRE?
Yes, these are supposed to be INSPIRE services, yes.
Okay,
So in all the 4 cases, the data are quite easily accessible from the national geoportals, yes. Sometimes with some login procedure, some registration procedure where you can encounter some hurdles, but once overcome these hurdles, that was straightforward in these cases.
Yes, it's not a question, it's a comment. I am very happy of this example because this was the kind of use case that was described in the data specification about buildings, and I am happy to see it occur at Eurostat. And another remark is that very likely the age, number of flow, and classification of building are considered as core attributes by UN-GGIM
Okay.
to encourage their availability in whole Europe.
That's very promising.
Okay, thanks for your comment. I think we'll have to move to the next speaker. Thanks again, Hugo.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me just put here. So the next speaker is Jérémy Andrés from the University of Franche-Comté. So let me, voilà. Is this one? Version anglaise? Is this one?
It is one. Yes.
Okay. So it starts thinking. Oh, ooh, no. Okay. So the floor. He's going to present the project JURAD-BAT.
JURAD-BAT.
Project. So please, the floor.
Hello, I am Jérémy Andrés. I work as a database manager at the University of Franche-Comté. As you may have guessed, I am here to introduce the JURAD-BAT project. This Interreg project is led by the University of Franche-Comté and the School of Engineering and Architecture of Freiburg in Switzerland. The general aim to improve understanding, radon risk and indoor air quality, in general on the Jurassic arc between France and Switzerland. A more precise objective is to develop a web platform for different audiences, general public, territorial authority, or experts. They will have access to a great variety of information, specific training, data sheets, etc. To give a view, better understanding of the project, you need to understand how it started and the inherent risk link to poor air quality. It all began in Franche-Comté. Many people as doctors, academics, safety specialists, territorial authorities, and association work on radon air quality and air quality. in 2011, it is decided to unite their efforts, resources, and information. It's the birth of la démarche pluraliste Radon de Franche-Comté, or the Radon pluralist approach of Franche-Comté. It set your priority in three main areas. First, fieldwork by launching a measurement campaign of radon and other pollutants in housing. The second, analyzed to improve information. And third, dissemination of knowledge, for example, by collaborating with Museum of Life Science, Pavillon des Sciences de Montbéliard, and the setting up of a website. The indoor air quality is not just a French problem. For example, the radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that is produced as a decay product of uranium. Some soils, as granitic ones, are radon rich. Indeed, regions like Switzerland or Franche-Comté are particularly concerned. Excuse me. It came naturally to cooperate with Switzerland. The first collaboration were forged with Federal Office of Public Health, FOPH, and School of Engineering and Architecture of Freiburg. Before the JURAD-BAT project, they worked together for many years on these issues. From the beginning, I am talking about indoor air quality. We are more used to hear about pollution alerts to fine particles, which is outdoor pollution. But obviously, outdoor and indoor pollution are connected. But here, few indoor air pollution. Is the air in your home really healthy? Of course, you don't have to answer right now. But I will do it for you. Not really, it's not a good air. So, which kind of pollution are we talking about? Caution, they are not short by order of importance, and it's not a complete list. I will briefly present a few emission sources. They can come from outside air, building materials, human activity, soil, etc. We find sourcing pollutants like vehicles, buses, motorcycles, cars, etc. Industry, chemical, like technology and other. Natural gas like radon, deodorizer, your friendly pets, dust, natural products, incense, candle, essential oils, dust mite, mold, tobacco, plants, and houses equipment. Maybe presented like this, it seems to be quite harmful, but if we take a look at the statistics, we quickly change your opinion. In 2016, according to the World Health Organization, it's 3 million deaths per year. For Switzerland, according to the Tribune de Genève, in also 2016, it's 1,500 deaths per year. For France, according to the Monitoring Center for Air Quality, in 2014, it's 20,000 deaths per year. Next, radon can also cause lung cancer between 5 and 12%. I know this part of my presentation is not happiest, but I'm coming to the end. According to Monitoring Center for Indoor Air Quality and the NCINS, the socio-economic cost in a country like France, it's 20 billion euros per year. Hopefully, we have ID reduced this number. It could be interesting to take a look at sorry. It could be interesting to take a look at the energy efficiency race and its consequences. Why? Quite simply, by insulating more and more buildings, we are seeing to the rear you should not pass. Consequences? There is an important increase of some pollutant concentration in the indoor air. We often forget the ventilation system in energy efficiency process. So, to achieve this important goal, France and Switzerland get engaged only for the better, forever and ever. Not forever and ever. Only 3 years. 3 very busy years. There is the planning. The first years, 2016, 2017, the past year, we have gathered a lot of existing information, common learning on this subject. A report on the existing legislation and general practice at national, European, and international level has been writing. The second year, a web application will soon be created. New measurement campaign of radon and other pollutants in housing has been launched to complete the existing data. The third year, we'll continue to develop the web application. At the same time, we'll create educational tools on radon and indoor air quality. We'll create specific recommendations for professional and territorial authorities. So, our marriage as a price tag. This project costs about €1,500,000 on 3 years. The main priority of this project is not new. The current work, like the radon privacy approach of Franche-Comté, is based on the following activities. Fieldwork by launching a measurement campaign of radon and other pollutants in housing, analysis to improve information, dissemination of knowledge, but it takes it further. The aim is to create a common database on indoor air quality. This library will be enhanced in the future by the project partner upgrade. We will gather and link information on location, building structure, occupation of the building, pollutants, bringing together data from early campaigns and new measurements. The construction of a database is meant to be very long-term achievement, more than 3 years. Although the web application will be available sooner. In this way, database will be updated and new link will be added on a regular basis. And at the same time, it will be searchable to disseminate the knowledge on the poor risk. We'll be able to improve existing base map on France and Switzerland, to advise building professionals and general public on choice about building materials, iron, concrete, timber, earth, regarding their position. To set up training seminar on radon for the construction industry workers, to inform and advise the territory authorities, to disseminate the knowledge by cultural activities or with educational tools available on the future web platform. Well, I am talking about web platform for a while now. I should show you what it will look like. It will be multi-support: phone, table, desktop, and laptop computer. It basically operates on this model. On one side, here, there is a database. It is possible to import and to export data. To protect it, all data are completely anonymized immediately, and partners have the exclusive access. On the other side, the website will be granted partner to create map, export data in Excel or in CSV format, make statistics, etc. It gives also limited access to the data for general public. This way, only non-sensitive data will be available. The administrator will have authority over it. He will maintain and update the support database. At last, the administrator fully set up the access of each user. The first page presents the available information on the site: home page, pedagogic tools, map, etc. We find all the information we are looking for. Each audience, general public, professional, partner, territorial authorities, scientists, will have its own page featuring. Partner will have a member login. In the future, it will be very easy to expand this. The second one presents the project with map, an abstract and all partner of project. The last one is an example of member page. The partner can make map, statistic, import and export data, manage private data, make indicator, etc. I think my presentation is complete. I would like to thank all partners, and of course, thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot. That's it, Jeremy. Won't be feeling safe anymore if I help. So, any question to Jeremy? Are you thinking about collecting or extracting information using INSPIRE services, or are you, or it's something that's following, publishing this information?
Actually, it's not possible.
Okay.
The project began just last year.
Okay.
And for me, I create the database.
Yeah.
It's just model actually, but it's not the last version.
Okay.
Because it's here. It's a lot of information and different information, and between Switzerland, between France, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks a lot. I think we should pass to the next speaker. Thanks again, Jeremy. The next speaker is Ervin Gore? Yes, sorry. Yes, Ervin Gore from Vito. Let me just open. Sorry. Yeah. Presentation, right? Oh, it's a big presentation. It's very contains a lot of. Okay. So he's going to present WatchItGrow, a platform for a sustainable growth of potato products, and the links to European exploitation platforms and agricultural products. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So indeed, my presentation is not about a few million that's a year, but about feeding people, so Belgian potatoes. So I will explain an application, WatchItGrow, and then I will put a link to some European exploitation platforms where we can process this, where we can build this kind of applications, and you will also see the link with all these web services of INSPIRE. So first, WatchItGrow. So it started a few years ago as a small Belgian research project where Vito, which is the company I represent, a Belgian research institute, we were asked by the Belgian science policy to support Belgapom, and Belgapom is the Belgian it's a Belgian association to support the Belgian trading, potato trading and producing industry, like that. And so we wanted to investigate the potential of remote sensing for supporting these potato producing and trading industry. And what we want to do is so monitoring potatoes from space. So we wanted to bring maps of the crop development, investigate the field heterogeneity, also highlighting risk for production disruption and quality risk, and also giving some yield forecast, so some harvest forecast. And towards all these actors, so these are the farmers, the big companies like McCain, Farm Fright, but also the trading industry and so on. We wanted to give, first of all, to enable them to use remote sensing data, so Sentinel data, Copernicus data, but as well offer them a platform where they can ingest their own data on managing their fields. So for example, which treatments they did, which irrigation they did, and so on. So let me browse through the capabilities of the application. So first of all, there's meteo data, which we got from the Belgian Meteo Office, but as well ECMWF, where at a weekly base we give information about temperature and rainfall. We don't give the temperature as such, but we give the deviation according to an average. Because if it's too dry, too wet, too cold, too warm, this can give some indication on the risk for production loss, for example. So this is important to see the deviation on an average temperature in a specific date. Secondly, there is satellite images. Now we are using Sentinel-2, of course. Copernicus delivers this data for free. But before we used commercial sensors such as DMC demos. And based on this, we derive a greenness index which says something about the health of the vegetation, of the crop, let's say, the potato crop. Traditionally at the Vito, we use very complex vegetation indices like FAPAR, F-cover, LIE, leaf area index, and so on. Here behind the hood, there's the same thing, but we call it a greenness index so that farmers can understand it better. It's just a marketing advantage, let's say. And you will see, for example, if you have here consecutive images from Sentinel-2 we got, and then we derive this kind of greenness index, and you will see that there is the crop is getting more green until somewhere in mid-August, and then the leaves are starting to die, which means that the crops are ready to be harvested. And so this provides the farmer an ability to follow up his fields without having to visit the field. Then you can also check for anomalies. So at the left corner, left upper corner, you see an image from Sentinel-2. This is what we delivered to the farmers. And you see that there's a significant crop damage because of too heavy rainfall in this period. And at the right, we have some UAV data where you see clearly that the Sentinel, the satellite image, gives you the same information, similar as the UAV data. So the UAV, this is done for specific fields just for validation purposes, for making the system of good quality. And what we deliver is the top left to the farmers, and this is, let's say, reflecting reality. You also can can discover heterogeneity in your field. So you see in the picture that there are some parts in the field where the crop is green, others it's brown. Today we use this mainly to support the big companies. So a big company, they don't have farms themselves. They just make negotiations with farms or agreements with farmers, put this amount of potatoes on your farm. And if they detect such a field, they won't select it next year anymore. So just for supporting these kind of things. In the future, you can also use this towards precision farming, so doing really on-the-spot fertilization, irrigation, and so on. But we are not yet that far today. But this is clearly the future. Of course, you can also compare different fields. So this is if a big company like McCain has a lot of fields to manage, they can plan their harvest according to this kind of monitoring tools. And of course, this is the most difficult part, is the yield forecast. Yield means the harvest forecast, where based on a lot of data, remote sensing data, meteo data, but as well soil information and so on, we are able to predict with a few models the yield. So by mid of August, so last month, we sent out these yields per field, per municipality, per province, and so on. And the feedback which we got from the farmers was this really realistic view on what can be expected to be yielded. And then, so this is all about remote sensing-based data or meteo-based data. Now we also have some support for the farmers themselves. So we got from the Flemish government every year an overview of all the fields where potatoes are grown. This is something that the farmers have to report. So all the potato fields are in the system by default, but as well a farmer can of course draw his own field or upload the shapefile, for example. And then he can start managing his field, so he gets an overview like this. So this is all the fields of a specific farmer, the variety which is planted, the planting date, whether it has been harvested, yes or no, the yield, and so on and so forth. And for the yield, you see some color codes, which are then the yield against some benchmark for this specific region. So he can assess whether this field is doing well or worse than an average in this region. So a lot of support where the farmer can just manage his fields, and he can also, so if he clicks on this field, he can also see the temperature curve for this specific field compared with some average temperature, as well the rainfall. So here you see that specifically in May, June, there was some very wet period, for example, which has some consequence on the quality. And of course the greenness index, so the evolution of the crop when it is getting more greener and then getting worse again. And a lot of more information. I will stop here, I think, for this first part. Because I want to show you as well, so it's a nice application, I think, but how does this relate to all the web servers which are popping up here and there? So I want to show you, discuss one specific project, the Mission Exploitation Platform PROBA-V, and then I will shortly discuss also Food Security and NextGeos. Mission Exploitation Platform PROBA-V. Well, PROBA-V is a Belgian satellite mission. It's a Copernicus contributing mission, giving every day full coverage of all land masses at global scale at 300-meter resolution, and every 5 days a full coverage at 100-meter resolution. It's not so important, but just to say that it's about 150 terabytes of data per year which flows to the user. And if you take into account that with PROBA-V and with the previous mission, Spotfish Station, we have a time series of 20 years of data, 20 years yearly data, global scale. This is petabyte range. And also from the Copernicus Global Land Service, we are also producing at Vito a lot of vegetation images at 300-meter resolution. Also a time series of more than 20 years. And this means too much data to be explored by users, because most of users, they need it at continental scale and it's too much data. So therefore we got an agreement with ESA, the European Space Agency, to develop a platform which was really focused on this exploration of the time series. So people should be able to develop applications, test applications, deploy applications on the platform without having to download data, and should be able to run on-demand processing chains on the platform. So bringing, let's say, cloud-based resources, processing resources close to the data. It's built on OpenStack, private cloud, Hadoop, it doesn't matter today, I think. But in scope of the data is low resolution, medium resolution data from the mission I just mentioned, but as well high resolution from Sentinel-2, for example. And on this platform, we then could build this WatchItGrow application. So in this generic platform, we support a few servers. I will quickly go over the features so you can view all the data in full resolution. It's you have to realize that with a time slide, you can browse through 20 years of data. Any data you can see, and you can really zoom into the finest level. On our, it's processed on our Hadoop cluster. Also, vegetation images can be viewed there, and you see that all these data are available via OGC standards. WMTS, for example, which then we use also in the WatchItGrow application to visualize the data towards the farmer. We also have time series viewers. So this is an animation which doesn't work, but essentially you can select a region and draw and select 2 pixels that are the flags on the map, and then you can see the evolution of a vegetation parameter over time. And this is also information which, on high resolution, is then needed for this potato farmer to see the evolution of an index and compare to an average, a long-term average. These are the statistics you can get, not so important now. You can also draw a polygon, and then we aggregate all the pixels within the polygon for each day and plot it then again. So this is all executed on the fly on an Hadoop cluster within a matter of a few seconds. Also, this is available as a RESTful interface, so we tried also to work with sensor observation servers, but this was too complex, so we made our own RESTful interface, which was more suited to deliver this fast to the user. And we also are capable of running on-demand processing chains on a Hadoop cluster, some invoking processing on demand. This is, I will not detail it. We can provision virtual machines where you can have access to all the data and all the tools pre-installed. So as a researcher, you don't have to install tools anymore. You can just go to the platform and everything is installed for you. And last but not least, Jupyter Notebooks. I don't know whether you're familiar with that, but that's a means of working with Python and R, so two scripting languages, from a simple web browser. So you can simply, I don't know whether this works. This is an example of a notebook which you can execute in real time. Yeah, it doesn't work, okay, it doesn't matter. So a notebook is then, so you see it here at the left as well. You type some Python scripts, you get the result, and based on the results you can further on work with Python, so it's really interactively working with the system. Behind this is more than 1 petabyte of data, you have to realize. So this makes it very powerful. There are a lot of information available, so if you really want to try it, you can get free VMs, free notebook access on our website. So just log in and you can try it if you want to get familiar with it. Now in the last, I will skip this presentation, it brings me too far, but just to saying that on top of this platform we build a lot of web services, WPS for invoking processing, but catalog services, WMTS, and this is all then used in this potato application. So we really rely on web services behind the car, let's say. Now, just to introduce you 2 more projects, which are very interesting if you are interested in agriculture monitoring. This is the NextGeos. So NextGeos is a 10 million project, Horizon 2020 funded. It brings together 27 partners, and we started, I think, in December last year. And here the idea is to bring lots of data, all Copernicus data, on cloud resources, so that people can process these data on public clouds without having to download the data themselves. This is what we need, because the WatchItGrow platform, as I explained earlier, is working now on Belgium, but we have the ambition also to do it on other countries. So we need global Sentinel-2 data, which is too much to be hosted at our own institute. So in this project, we will move our processing to the public cloud. We can invoke the processing where it is needed and also build up the data capabilities, infrastructure, and so on. So it is a very important initiative where Vito is leading 2 pilots on agriculture monitoring and on food security. So in this we are really bringing the food security, the WatchItGrow application to the public cloud. And there's another one interesting platform which is sponsored by ESA, not by the Commission, but by ESA, which is a thematic exploitation platform on food security. So this platform brings together all, just 10 seconds, all information needed to do this kind of agriculture monitoring and also aquaculture monitoring. So all the data needed there and together with ICT resources, and we then offer different kind of services, so a basic view which is free of charge, something for mobile apps, very intuitive, but as well customized interfaces for really attracting companies who want to build such an application as we have done at Vito. I think I have to stop here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Any question for Erwin? Would you consider extending potentially the application of potato to other kind of crop? Or,
yes, we are doing. We are doing. So we are first of all extending geographically.
Yeah.
But as well, in another project, Data Bio, we are also trying to do this for other crops. Yes, I know the Dutch names, but not dadels. I don't know the English names. But it's not straightforward. I mean, you can easily monitor the growth of vegetation, the greenness, that's easy. But for example, a yield model is completely dependent on the region, on the different crops. So this is not, it's not straightforward, but we do this, yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are you doing the spatial analytics in grass? Or you have different models depending on which indicator?
In our VMs, in our virtual machine, we offer GrassGIS as a tool, as one of the central next to QGIS and Snap Toolbox and so on. But in-house, we don't use it, no. We do, we use GeoTrellis, which is a tool on top of Hadoop, not GrassGIS.
Oh, so that's on top of Hadoop?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any final question? If not, another applause to Erwin. the final presentation, just I always forget to sign this to accept that. So the next presentation is, which is the last one. I will open it. Oh, it's here. C'est JURAD-BAT Okay. Ah, the PPT? Yes.
No, the other one.
Ah, sorry.
Not the PDF.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thanks. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This presentation deals with the French SDIs and their users. It will present the preliminary result of a research project, JURAD-BAT. Its team is made up of 17 researchers from various French institutions that you can see here. As for me, my name is JURAD-BAT and I am a research fellow at the French National Center for Scientific Research, located in Bordeaux. Why do we conduct a research project about French SDIs with a focus on their users? The reasons are mainly to be found in the French national context. Compared to the other members, to the other countries, France is unusual regarding the large number of SDIs. In addition, the current French territorial reform is currently merging the 22 former regions into 13. These characteristics lead to a complex spatial information universe comprising redundancies, mergings, and competition. In this context, we talk about the research project JURAD-BAT aims to provide a comprehensive view of institutional spatial data sharing in France based on 4 dimensions: data accessibility, systems interoperability, actor networking, and informational equality in the regions. In order to conduct that, we need to consider the data and the services provided by the SDIs, the promoters of the SDIs and their strategies, and the users and their practices. This presentation is restricted to this part of the triangle, the users and their practices. However, there is other result already available, in particular in the article recently published in the INSPIRE journal that you can see on the link here on open access. The focus on the SDIs used can be justified by the fact that low attention is given to the study of SDI users, and it can be partly explained by the fact that SDIs are large and complex web-based systems combining social and technical components. This part of the project, so the part focusing on SDIs use, has 4 main research questions. Who are the users? What kind of SDIs do they use? How do they use SDIs? And what are the changes over time? This part of the project is based on online surveys conducted in 2012 and 2017, based on similar questions and analyzed thanks to a social network analyzing. The target of the online users are people coming from public bodies working on environmental management. And the online surveys generate a database combining 446 users and 141 SDIs in as I said, in 2012. And 5 years later, the database is made up of 256 users and close to 100 SDIs. For the SDIs, 29 are shared in the two surveys, but as the question and the survey are anonymous, we are not able to know exactly who are the users who give answers at the 2 dates. So in the following section, we will try to answer the research question. Who are the users and what the changes between the 2 dates of the online surveys? The users are mainly civil servants from territorial agencies. They are mainly geomatic specialists, and they are involved in local institutional level. We can see very little change between 2012 and 2017. As for the SDIs and the changes, the SDIs mentioned by the users are mainly SDIs giving access to data within multiple domain data, and they are infrastructures implemented at the regional and at the national level. And again, on this base, on this kind of statistics, very basic statistic description, very little change can be seen between the 2 dates. In order to explore how do the user use SDIs, we have implemented a social network analysis, which is a kind of production of graph that allowed to explore the interaction between the SDIs and their users. Each time a user said that I use GeoPortal or I use that kind of user, we can make a connection between the user and the SDI. And as we have several users and SDIs, we can create a network of interaction for both dates. So here you can see the 2 graphs at the date 2012 and 2017. In red, there are it's SDIs, and in black, it's users. And by using different metrics of this kind of analysis, here is the matrix degree. We can measure the number of connections between SDIs and users, and it allows us to highlight that few SDIs are used by, few SDIs are used by a large number of users, like here, but also many SDIs are used by a small number of users, or only one users. On the user side, many users are using one SDI or a small number of SDIs, and a few users using a large number of SDIs. As it's sometimes a little bit difficult, we can take a closer look. For example, here is the a focus on the SDIs, on the SDI GeoCrichPaca, who has the most the high number of connection between with user. There is 183 users only for this SDI within the graph, which is a little bit more than 40% of the total number of the users. And in 2017, we have GeoPortal, which is the national SDI in France, was only close to 50% of the total number of SDIs. Again, the same exercise can give us information about the user. And here we can see one user connected with 10 SDIs, close to, it's 7% of the total number of SDIs. And in last year, the survey of last year, we have a user using 20 SDIs, which is 20% of the total number of SDIs of this survey. And actually, it's this trend appeared to strength between the 2 dates, because in 2012, only 73% of the total number of SDR said that they need more than one SDI for their professional practices. And in 2017, it's close to 70% of the number of the users that they combine more than one SDI. In order to explore this preliminary result, we have implemented a multi-level representation of the former graphs, where you can see again in black and red, in black users and in red SDIs, and they are grouped at the same level. So here is all the user work involved at the municipal level in 2012, and in here is, for example, SDI at the municipal level in 2017. And it is relevant to do this kind of representation to have an idea of the specific importance of each level, and to explore a little bit more the multiple use of SDI, we have limited these graphs to the user using multiple SDIs. It is so the important role of national and regional SDIs can be seen a little bit more clearly. And if we go into details, we can have a look at the national level and the regional level. In 2012, multi-level representations highlighted the importance of the regional level, that we can see here, more 50% of the total connection of the graph. And in 2017, it's the national level which is the most important, as more than 60% of the total connection are between a user and a national SDIs. For us, it seems important to explore a little bit this preliminary result, because the current territorial reform clearly mentioned that regional SDI are the key level for success spatial data management and sharing in France. So we really need to take a look at this kind of preliminary result. And to do that, we need to conduct additional analysis, especially in order to integrate information about not only user, but about data accessibility, systems interoperability, and so on, as well as the external factors like the territorial reform, to have more detail about this change. And in this way, it will put this question, the question about SDIs use, into perspective, but also bring some answers about the, in a global way, environmental governance. And that is the end. Thanks for your attention.
Any question to James? Please go on.
Thanks. Did you also take into account which data were served by the different SDIs?
Yes, it's exactly that part, actually, of the project.
Well, my question was that whether she took into account the data that was served by different SDIs.
You mean the data provided by the SDI? Yeah, exactly. It's that part of the project. Actually, we are. If you are interested on that side, you can have a look on this paper, and they give information about the automatic extraction of the metadata on it that we can collect from out of each of the geocatalogs. And the idea is really to combine this information and to have the big picture of the data sharing in France.
Any other question? I find it very interesting. I will have a look.
Thank you.
I think it's, I mean, I understand from what you said that the main target users were public servants, civil servants. Do you think things would have changed in these diagrams about using SDIs at different level if we shift the focus to the private users?
Civil servants are really the target of this project, but there is other project conducted by other researchers of the team, and this project focusing on VGI and citizen science, which allow us to take into account the citizen contribution and to combine this information and try to understand a little bit more. But apparently, for this project, the online users online survey was anonymous to allow the people to be really free in their answer. So the focus went really on the civil servant, and apparently their profile are quite similar, based on the very basic categories, I would say.
Seeing how the SDIs are more used when they are at national level, regional level, but not so well exploited when they are at local level.
We need to continue. I agree.
Yes. Good afternoon, Bruno Tenaille from the Normandy region. I would like to know if you have taken into account the relations between the different level of SDIs. For example, at a regional level, we upload or download information to the national portal, and then we have also some thematic SDI, which are interested to consider because they are focused, but there are some relations between these various SDIs. How have you coped with this issue, or it is part of your study?
It's totally underway now. I had to limit the result that we have now, but as you can see here, we have the information about the generalist SDI and also the thematic SDI, which is unique domain data. Okay, so that's in French we said SDI, IDG généraliste et IDG thématique. So we have this information within the research, and we are already looking at these specificities of the SDI. And regarding the harvesting, the harvest services between the SDI at the national and the regional level and to the other level is really taking into account on this part. And again, it's the automatic extraction change that allowed to collect some of this information, but also we have conducted again, an online survey and some interviews with the promoters to know exactly what SDI is harvest that other SDI, because apparently I'm not an information and a technical people, but it's not always automatic to know that who is harvesting who. So we need to have specific contact with the technical people to know exactly what are the authorization to harvest. So yes, it is taking into account when we look at the global project, but not on that specific side of this triangle.
Okay, I think we will have to stop here because we have the coffee break. Thanks again for your
Thank you.
Enjoy the coffee break. Thanks for your attendance.
Yes. Avec plaisir. Oui, oui. Oui, oui. En fait, on est quand même vers la fin. Là, il restera une année. Et c'est l'année où on va croiser toutes ces informations.
D'accord, avec les autres aspects.
Oui, voilà. Parce qu'effectivement, comme vous avez mis le doigt... Bonjour. Vous êtes de Normandie, parfait.
La région.
Vous avez certainement dû répondre à nos questionnaires. Vous connaissez peut-être Mathieu Nouchet, qui est le coordinateur de ce projet. Vous avez peut-être été contacté... en tout cas, je sais qu'on a eu des réponses de votre part. Quand on contacte, comme je montrais là dans la partie haute, ce qu'on appelle les coordinateurs d'IDG, on a vraiment pris en compte ces éléments-là.